Hi, everyone. I'm Josh.
And I'm Jim, and this is the Dapper Meeple.
This show is about our love of gaming, the games we play, and the gaming community around this passion.
So grab some snacks, pull up a chair, and join us at the table with your monocle and bowler hat. Hey kids, remember, this is an adult podcast and you ain't became adult.
Also, the Dapper Meeple outfit, not real. Join us on this episode as we talk about the most influential crossover in the history of board games.
We're also going to relive our weekend at PAX U and talk about all the great things that we saw there.
We'll also go into the Daggerheart panel and what is next for this up-and-coming TTRPG.
And lastly, if that excited you, we're going to help you get started in Daggerheart by going over the first part of character creation in our new segment, It All Starts With a Story.
All that and more on this episode of the Dapper Meeple.
All right, so I know it is a classic, right? And it is one of the, what did they used to call gateway drugs? Yeah. But I never know how to pronounce it, right? Is it Catan or Catan?
I think that's a highly debated topic in the community. Some people feel very passionate on both sides, but either way, after the amount of time that this game has been such a touchstone of this hobby, it is continuing to make waves. It is always a big part of like conventions and things that we go to.
Oh my God, yes. And they've released so many new versions of it and so many add-ons. And I know people that as soon as I talk to them about games, their first thing is, oh, have you ever played Catan?
Yeah.
And then whatever they say, I correct them. You mean Catan?
Yeah.
I have absolutely no dog in this fight, but
it's just a great game to play.
I'm establishing dominance early. So yeah, again, it's like you said, it's a touchstone. It's one of the games that the majority of people coming into this hobby for the first time know, and it continues to expand into new realms.
Yep. So recently news has come out that they have signed a deal to be on certain things produced by Netflix. So I don't know exactly the details of what that looks like, whether it's going to be a Catan themed show or movie or just going to be featured in maybe advertising or something like that. But either way, like that's a pretty crazy thing considering of the hobby when you talk about from the professional side.
Right.
But I think even more so than that is the other deal that just came out that they just signed is a crossover or agreement with the Minnesota Timberwolves.
We're actually touching the sports ball side of this. I really want to know who made that deal? Who on the Timberwolves or their management is, you know what, I like board games. And you know what goes great with board games? Basketball.
I think it shows this renaissance that tabletop gaming has gone through in the past few years, where it's moved from like this hobby that was for the nerds and outcasts and those like that group of people to becoming a much more ubiquitous hobby. No matter like how you approach it, like there is space at the table for everyone. We talk about it a lot in like the RPG realm specifically, but I think that extends over into the board games now. I think there was something in the article I was reading that some of the Timberwolves players like are active players at board games. Like they enjoy them. They enjoy the hobby. And I think it's cool that they're crossing those boundaries that before may not have been something that would have been possible or crossed. But they're talking about having like special events where, you know, on certain nights when you go see the Timberwolves, there'll be stuff set up in the concourse where you can play like games and things like that. There'll be Catan themed giveaways that they'll have as well at those games. So all kinds of stuff like that is just really interesting that they're able to cross those streams, I guess would be the way to put it.
I think they saw that Gen Con was taking over a Lucas Oil Stadium and they were like, hey, we want a piece of this. So I love it if jocks are fighting over who's going to get to play the most board games now.
Sure. Like
full circle.
I would not be surprised if that's where we end up at. But either way, like to have an IP as old as Catan that has been around for a long time, still looking to break ground in new ways. I'll be honest, they're not the first IP I would have expected to do
Not at
something
all.
like this. But they are, I think, so well positioned and rooted in the kind of whole atmosphere of board gaming that they become this kind of household name among hobby games. So if you know anything outside of your standard Monopoly, Sorry, and Trouble, you
Yeah.
probably have heard of Catan. So I think it's really cool. I think it's exciting to see where they'll continue to go. And hopefully it starts a trend of more companies being able to extend their reach outside of just the traditional means.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I feel that these are the big companies, right? These are the headliners for when you go to these conventions and stuff. Them doing better, hopefully that bleeds down for these indie creators that are out there, like the thousands and thousands of people who are spending their nights and weekends prototyping board games and making something new in hopes that it's going to take off and people are going to enjoy it. Because we've talked about before, board games are not the industry you go to get rich in.
Yeah.
But maybe we can at least get to comfortable middle class.
A lot of those companies, like we talked about before, utilize things like Kickstarter to get there. And speaking of Kickstarter, let's talk about the strike.
Yes, we brought this up last time. Now it wasn't all of Kickstarter. There was a department which included like some of their developers and things like that, and they were striking because of some changes that were being made at Kickstarter. There were some things that happened during COVID, and Kickstarter was talking about adjusting that, and they did go on strike. They also came out and said, "Hey, we're not asking for a boycott or anything. This is us dealing with management. Keep supporting the creators and the people that are putting their projects on Kickstarter, and we'll take care of this." And it seems like that they've gotten to an agreement. So let's see some of the big things that they were talking about. During COVID, they actually started a 4-day work week. It was incredibly successful. They were still being productive, and by some of the measures that we've seen, they were more productive with a 4-day work week, with which has been talked about when you talk like the Scandinavian model of a work week. People that are only working 4 days and have times to have real lives come back happier. That shit's crazy. The company was talking like, we want to have the ability to go back to a 5-day work week. Not that they were immediately going to implement it. And of course, all of these workers are like, no, we don't want to give you that option. That's stupid. Why would you want to do this? So we talked about it last time. Do you think that we're going to come back and our productivity is going to go up because there's an extra day? I can guarantee you that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So the 4-day work week has been cemented back in place. The next part of it was a minimum salary. The original salary that they were working on, the minimum, I don't even think it was as much as what's considered the poverty line in New York, where they're based out of.
Yeah, that was nice to see them be able to get at least a floor established, as opposed to, unfortunately, like New York's not a cheap place to live. And the people who needed to be there to do that job, like they should be compensated because of that.
And a lot of them talked about that Kickstarter has a reputation for being a great company to work for.
Yeah.
And some of them took pay cuts to come here, but you still have to be able to pay your rent and buy food, like bare minimum. So they did establish a new salary floor. They were working on improving pay equity, particularly for their lowest paid workers. So everybody is fighting to make sure that we're all in the same group, which I mean feels like giving some gamer shit right there. And the last one, which I think is huge, is AI protections. The contract included provisions to protect workers from being replaced by AI. Because in all these movies and stuff where they develop AI to make our lives better, that's great, but we forgot to add in greedy capitalist BS. So I don't think I've seen a lot of companies that jump into the AI pool that don't try to use it to eliminate actual people from the workforce.
Yeah, I think that's something that as we continue to develop and grow this AI potential, that is something that needs to be taken looked at seriously by lawmakers and things like that moving forward. That's not necessarily what this podcast is about, but I'm glad that's included in their provisions, because I think it is something to be concerned about, or to at least be aware of and make provisions for.
Employees of Kickstarter getting together and damn the man, save the empire.
They want us to fall, we taking it higher. Hey, rising, yeah. And I've been hard to kill. High speed, my hands off the wheel. NCT, I've been off the pill. MVP when I show my skill. Horror scene if I lose my chill. Bodies dropping and blood gets spilled. Doing drills, try kinging hills. Nyck swinging steel to my throne.
We just got back from PAX. PAX Unplugged, one of our favorite conventions that we've gone to for years now. Always held in the wonderful heart of Philadelphia. This year was a little bit unusual. It got moved up from its normal first or second week of December into right before Thanksgiving. Yeah, had a great time. Had the marathon going at the same time. So
I was really impressed with how little that interfered with PAX. I was just expecting it to be a nightmare on Saturday. No, didn't notice at all.
I wonder, I don't think they put out the official numbers yet for people, but I expected things like the area around the convention center to be extremely like packed and crowded, but it really wasn't bad. But I'm not sure where the race started and ended at. I know the convention center was like the headquarters for them to get signups and all that stuff done, but I don't know as far as the actual race where it started and ended.
Where it ended. I know we did see some roads roped off as we were driving in and stuff, but again, didn't really affect us. I was expecting more, but no, PAX was PAX, man. Like you said, around the area, around the convention center, I expected Reading Terminal to be crazy, but I think Reading Terminal has reached peak crazy. I don't think you can add too many more people to that.
It's only ever as crazy as it is.
Yeah, Anytime between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., that's just going to be what it is.
Yeah.
You're going to be in there and everybody's going to get friendly. There will be somebody yelling at somebody from one of the stands. That's just
probably about a cheesesteak.
That's right. Yeah. Either a cheesesteak or keep your ass in the lines while you're waiting. One of the two.
Yeah.
This was weird for us too, because this is the first convention in a little while where we either weren't working the convention or we didn't have something to do. Like even last PAX, we weren't working the convention, but Sam came out with us and he was doing a lot of demoing and prototyping games and talking to people. And we got to hang out with him doing that and gave us some purpose. We were on our own, man. Just completely in the wind.
It definitely felt different, especially coming off of, I mean, you did Origins and then of course we both did Gen Con, which when you're working a convention, if those of you who are listening never have, it's a whirlwind. Because it's, especially if you have any kind of events going or anything like that, like you are running from 30 minutes before those events till probably 30 minutes after the last one's done. And it's everything you can do just to make sure you're in the place you need to be at the time you need to be there. It was weird not having that here with PAX. We just did what we wanted to do. We picked a couple things. We ran around, saw a couple shows. I will say there was some new and like different, I guess, that were at PAX, extending out the reach. It wasn't your standard just like board game or RPG panels or things like that. Speaking of, we actually got to see Jacques Whipper.
Yeah, which was really cool. This is not his normal thing.
Yeah. If you've seen his videos on TikTok or wherever, he's normally at Ren fairs. So there is some crossover there. That those crowds usually are in the same crowds as board gamers, but definitely you could tell like he is not used to doing shows inside. So like when he first started, he's a little worried about how loud the echo is going to be in the whip cracks. So like he did like some testing to make sure that nobody would get freaked out or it was too loud for him, which was really cool. But the show was fun. It was pretty much, I think, his same show that he does at Ren fairs, just on a stage and in front of all these people. But it was really good. Enjoyed that. I'm glad to see him or PAX actually inviting what I would describe as more fringe guests, I guess, in the tabletop industry to come and have some fun with this. So I'm interested to see where that continues to grow and move.
Yeah, one of the other guests I didn't get to meet, but I know that he was floating around, was Scotty K Fitness. He has a YouTube and a TikTok as well. Just this kind of ginger white dude with a giant mustache that is a huge Fallout fan, like huge Fallout fan. But he's also like 3% body fat or something because that's just his thing. But all of his videos are like super positive. It's like, hey, if you want to work out and feel better, then these are some things you can do. And here's some like diet ideas and stuff like that. But then he goes, also, look, I have my own Pip Boy. So he came in too as well, and he did a panel, and I think him and Iffy Wadaway did a panel together. Yeah, just like you're saying, like these guests that are not, that we wouldn't call board game or TTRPG influencers or creators. And they're like, hey, you do the same nerdy stuff we do. Like we've talked about for a while. I think some of our first episodes, we talked about Tank Tolman, who
Yeah.
was just this big nerdy Viking dude that was doing like, hey, let's do workouts with battle axes. So that kind of thing I thought was really cool. It feels like PAX was expanding, pushing the horizons a little bit.
And I also like how there was a lot of content focused on not just the community, but also the more like profession side of gaming.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff about networking within the industry. There was how to create a evergreen game, like how to design that, what to look for, that sort of thing. And I like that kind of stuff being there as well, because like us, many people come to these not just because they enjoy games, but like maybe they're looking for a way to get involved in the industry in some way as well.
Yeah.
But of course, there were also games, lots of games.
Lots of games. We've talked about it before. PAX feels more player centered than, say, Gen Con, where Gen Con is the new sexy board game crack that's coming out. I think here, there's not as many new releases, but there always is a lot of, it really feels player focused.
Yeah, 100%. I think what you get at PAX a lot of times is maybe some expansion releases. Occasionally there will be a new game or two that's available, especially if it didn't make the boat for Essen or Gen Con. Sometimes you'll see that show up at PAX. But overall, like it's pretty much similar things to what we saw at Gen Con. A lot more geared towards like player and like the ability to play. So we get to do a lot of more actual sitting down and playing games at PAX.
And I like that, like Gen Con and stuff, when it's the new release, it's hard to get in. You're going to wait for it. There's going to be lots of people around it. PAX is a lot more kind of laid back. And I think it's easier to get in to actually sit and play something new that you're excited about.
Plus, there's like double the amount of people at Gen Con.
Okay, there is that as well. So one of the games that we got to play that we've been waiting on for a little while, so it was cool to get to actually run a test on this, was Toppings from Ludimus Games.
So we've had Joseph on the show a couple times now. If you haven't heard him, you could go back to when we had him on for his game We're Sinking. Also, he was in our Halloween special that we did last year. So just really good dude. Actually met him out of the blue when we got We're Sinking. We're like, we love this game. I think it'd be really cool if we talked to the designer. Found out who he was, messaged him, had him on the show a couple times. Now, every time we run into him at the shows, like always swing by and say, hey. He had Toppings at Gen Con, but he was also working the booth for Lucky Duck because they had just picked up We're Sinking as one of their games. They bought the rights to it. So he didn't have a whole lot of time to show off Toppings. But here at PAX, he actually made the PAX Rising Showcase. So yes. What that is, new and upcoming games that are deemed these are some of the stuff you want to check out. And they have a little section almost right in the middle of the expo hall where they all get to set up and run play tests of their games that show off what they are. And a lot of them are ones that aren't quite published yet, or maybe are coming to Kickstarter or something like that. So it was really cool, a great opportunity to see him there. And honestly, it was a really fun game.
Yeah, it was. It is a game where you are trying to win, collecting points, but it's also a game that it's a pizza party. I guess the idea is the pizza place screwed up the toppings and you're trying to make your perfect slice. But if the rest of the group doesn't have fun at the pizza party, it's still a failure. So it was that very much semi-cooperative type feeling to it.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's in a unique place as far as just the way that the game felt. I like a lot of the mechanics on it, just how there are some toppings that you're looking for that are shared between like you and the person sitting next to you. And then everyone has a topping that they don't want at all on their pizza that's kept face down. So that's a secret. And you're trying to maneuver the toppings, but you don't want to take all of the ones because you do share some of those toppings with your neighbor. So you want to leave enough for them to be able to get some on their slices of pizza as well. There are like sauces and seasonings that go on top of them to change the way the point values are on the slices, as well as there are like special connections. If you get ham and pineapple, it's actually worth 3 points every time you get a connection of that on your slice. So there were a bunch of different things like that, scoring mechanics and stuff that kind of worked in concert. And it was cool to see just like how they eventually worked together. It's pretty like easy, straightforward. It's not a crazy hard with rules or anything like that, but it was a nice, fun little game. I really liked it.
Like I said, it was good to see it where it is right now. And it was good to go play with Joseph. I think we might have been his first demo that he ran because we went to visit and he was like, "Hey, there's 2 seats open. Do you want to sit down?" And we're like, "Hell yeah."
Yeah.
Bear shit in the woods, Joseph. That's your next game. Work on that.
But when that comes to Kickstarter, we should hopefully have him back on the show, talk a little bit about that, and then go from there. But yeah, definitely, I love where it is. I think there's a few things he said he's working on, making some slight changes, doing some little workout on it, but I'm excited to see where that one goes.
We also got a chance to preview the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle adventures from Unmatched, which is just like the Amazing Adventures that they had put out before, where you take this system and now it is a PvE system, vice its standard PvP.
Yeah, so we backed this obviously as soon as it came out. Anyone who knows us and has heard like our story, obviously we are brothers, but I was born on the day that the first live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie came out. And because I had the audacity to be born on that day, I have never been forgiven for it.
That's fair for anybody that's listening that's going, "Oh, he can't help when he planned it. It was like 2 months early. You can't tell me that wasn't planned."
Yeah. So needless to say, we are fans of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle franchise just in general. We are also fans of Unmatched, especially the Tales to Amaze, the Unmatched Adventures that came out. It was a fantastic implementation. Like we've had a great time with it. When we saw this, we were like, yes, give us all the things. Here is our money. It's supposedly going to be shipped to us soon. I think the USA is like 20% done with shipping. So we're somewhere on that list. So hopefully in the next month or two, we'll get that and we'll probably do a segment on that. But it's so good to play. So you have, of course, each of the turtles and they all feel unique and different, which I really liked, which Unmatched has a history of doing that really well.
Yes.
If you have ever played any of the Unmatched games, any of the characters, they each have their own deck of cards that is unique to them. And then they'll have abilities or sidekicks or something like that. That is that same kind of feel. But they do feel very much like the characters, like in their abilities and things like that.
The actual gameplay itself that we were playing, I think, is the standard where you're going after Shredder, as the comic and show and the movies would suggest. But you're dealing with, much like with the Unmatched Adventures, there are things that build up, right? Like the Foot Clan moves into the different boroughs of New York. So you've got to deal with that while trying to get in there. He also has minions, and the minions were classic.
Yeah, it was like Rocksteady and Bebop, Baxter Stockman. Like, it's everything that I would want from a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game. 100%. It was fantastic. I can't wait to get our copy, because one of the cool things about Unmatched 2 is that once you have the characters, they're interchangeable, right? So you can use, for instance, their new set. You can use Bruce Lee to go after Shredder. You could use Muhammad Ali if you'd like. I would love to take the Ninja Turtles and go after Mothman. I think that is going to be like a fun interchangeable set that I'd like to try. But yeah, like all kinds of stuff, like that's really what makes Unmatched such a cool and unique system, is the way that all that works.
It's real similar to how Dice Throne does it too. They just play differently. It's a different experience, which is why we own a lot of both of them. Also, we may have a problem, so whatever. But it was good to get to see it. And now we're excited for when it does get delivered. The next thing that we heard coming out of PAX was Fantasy Flight. Their in-flight report, which is their yearly update of what they're doing, which is normally given at Gen Con, has moved to PAX Unplugged.
Yeah, and they announced that is going to be its home going forward. which is interesting because given I guess, all the eyes that come out on Gen Con, I think it's interesting moving to PAX. I think it gives PAX a little more legitimacy as a convention when companies make the move to do that. But some of the things that came out, there were obviously a bunch of updates for their various living card games that they have, from the Arkham Horror LCG to the Marvel Champions and all that. So there's a bunch of stuff going on in the card games. Not really something we delve into a whole lot, but if you're interested, you can find like a full transcript or the videos online. One of the things that they did come out that, of course, we are interested in is they have taken over the rights to Zombicide. So there was a Squid Games expansion that was coming out for Zombicide Second Edition that they were actually demoing there at PAX. And then they also announced the next fantasy version of Zombicide, which is going to be Dead Men Tales. So I'm picturing probably pirate theme, that sort of thing, which is really cool. If you're not familiar with Zombicide, they have the modern versions, which are the traditional Zombicide, like first and second edition. They have the fantasy versions, which are started with Black Plague, which was like that more like traditional fantasy. They had White Death, and now we're going to get this new one. There's a Western version of Zombicide. And we also, of course, one of our favorites, they had Marvel Zombies, which if you listen to the show for any length of time, we spent so much money on and now have all the things. And I would not trade it for the world. But that being said, it's good to see that even with CMON having the trouble that they are having and having to sell off IPs and things like that, that at least another company is going to pick up something that we really enjoy and continue to make new expansions and new content and things like that for it.
Yeah, and I thought it was wild that this is one of them that CMON was getting rid of. But hey, here we are. Things change, and Fantasy Flight has done well in the past with a lot of their games, so this is absolutely a great possibility.
Yeah, so some of the other big stuff that happened was surrounding Daggerheart. As we are fans of Daggerheart, we recently picked up the core set when we were at Gen Con and have been perusing through that, started a game, looking to start a couple other games to run as a campaign. But there was a panel at PAX that was the Daggerheart, like looking to the future, kind of here's what's coming up panel. If you are fans of Daggerheart yourself, you probably know that they just recently announced, while or right before PAX, the new Hope and Fear expansion that's coming out for it. And that's a lot of what this panel was about, was the kind of upcoming stuff that's going to be in that next expansion.
Which is great for a couple of reasons, right? I know when Daggerheart came out, there was all kinds of talk about it being the D&D killer, which I just don't think that's possible. I think D&D is going to exist in a popular format, even for years to come, just because it is so well known. It is the default TTRPG for a lot of new people. But I have to tell you that I, so far, have loved what's been in Daggerheart. And the fact that they are putting out an expansion already less than 190 days since their release, I think that bodes well for their overall product.
Yes, 100%. Just to give a quick rundown of kind of Daggerheart and how it's come about. Daggerheart is being produced by Darrington Press, which is the publication company side of kind of the Critical Role team, right? So they have been responsible for a few other games, particularly like Candela Obscura that came out. It was another RPG. They've done a few board games like Queen by Midnight. So there's a lot of talent that has gone into this publishing side. Recently, as in with this past year, there was the announcement that Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins were leaving Dungeons and Dragons for whatever reasons, whether retiring or whatnot. We didn't know at the time, but we have since found out in the past, probably 3-4 months, that they have both gone over to Darrington Press to work as content creators, publishers, that sort of thing.
That's more than 50 years of experience in gaming, and particularly with Wizards of the Coast, that just wandered over into Darrington Press.
Yeah. So there is a ton of pedigree over there now, not even including like the main designers of Daggerheart, who have their own like pedigree as far as game design and stuff like that. Needless to say, Darrington Press is sitting in a very good place when it comes to the amount of talent that they have in-house. Going back to the panel that we were able to go to, so the people who were on the panel were Jeremy Crawford, Matthew Mercer, and then we have the actual like main people from Daggerheart, which is Spencer Stark and Rowan Hall. They are the two main designers for Daggerheart. And then we had Elise Resendez, which she is, I can't remember her official title because I always think of her like the hype person for Daggerheart.
She's always out in front of the camera directing.
Yeah. Yeah. My favorite thing that I've seen about her is she is very active on the Daggerheart subreddit, but she usually is posting like various GIFs in response to what people are making. Like it's 100%, it's great. But these were the people on this panel, and it was a 2-part panel. The first thing was to talk about the new stuff that's coming out in the Hope and Fear expansion, but also to actually play a quick like 45-minute hour long like one shot in one of the new campaign frames that's going to be in the Hope and Fear set. So it was really cool. I obviously like just having those people be on the stage together is I'm glad we're living in this timeline. Let me put it that way.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So they begin talking about Hope and Fear. And like you mentioned, at the point when they did the panel, it was like 189 days that Daggerheart had been out, right? Daggerheart, when it first released, it immediately sold out. It was almost impossible to get your hands on until Gen Con. They were at the second printing at Gen Con. So it's still in those early stages. And I think it was Spencer Stark actually said we were hesitant because we didn't know how well this was going to do. So we didn't want to design a bunch of extra things and then it fall flat on its face and us not be able to do anything with it.
Which, no, it doesn't seem like that's going to be a concern. And them moving forward with it, there was a lot of things that happened at PAX that are very much like they're a big deal for Daggerheart.
Yeah. So they talked about some of the things coming out in the Hope and Fear expansion, which if you are a fan of Daggerheart and have been doing any kind of playing of it, you may know, hopefully, that on the Daggerheart website is this area of it called the Void, and it is their playtest material. So within the Void, they have put out some new classes, some new ancestries, some new communities. There's some transformation stuff, all of those things that are new playtest material that have been there for a while. Almost all of that is going to be ported into the new Hope and Fear expansion.
Yes.
All right. So we're looking at 4 new classes complete with their subclasses. There are 4 new campaign frames, 6 new ancestries, and 6 new communities. So a ton of just character creation opportunities. There are also the transformation cards, which are going to be official in this next set, which they include things like ways to make your character a vampire or a werewolf or reanimated zombie, which is one of my favorites, or even like a ghost. And there are like cards and rules and stuff that are going to come in the new set for that, which so far the playtest material that we messed around with has been fantastic.
Yeah, I've enjoyed everything that we have found. The base set was really good. Getting to expand on it a little bit has always really, it opens it up for a lot of other ideas. Just the system is just good.
Yeah. They also announced a couple other things that are going to be coming. If you have seen the special edition set that originally came out for Daggerheart, it came with a GM screen. A lot of people have been clamoring for a GM screen.
Yes.
So that is something they announced. They are going to have a standalone GM screen that you'll be able to purchase. You can now get one with the special edition of the Hope and Fear. So if that's something you want sooner rather than later, you can. But they said that there's going to be a GM screen with Fear token trackers. So I don't know exactly what that means yet, but I'm excited to see what that looks like. There are other things coming out, like an adversary deck. For those of you who are not a big fan of the way that Daggerheart does the adversaries with kind of a generic build your own, they are going to have a deck of cards with adversaries. So, more monster manual style. There's going to be a new dice tome rolling tray. And probably one of the coolest things I think is for Free RPG Day, which happens every year, there's
Right.
going to be a Daggerheart adventure included in that.
Which, again, really getting stuff out there for the community. And that's a lot. Just that much by itself is a lot for any new project like this. But they also talked about people that they are in partnership with, groups that are going to be playing live or have already done live play Daggerheart content that you can go find and check out yourself. We talked a little bit about it in our last episode, but here's where the announcements were coming from. Legends of Evantris, which are incredibly famous right now, really popular. They had their own meet and greet there. Did Dust to Damnation, and I believe that was in the Beast Feast setting.
I believe so.
Yeah, and all of this is not even the rumors that have been out there from Crawford and Perkins, and even my other best friend Keith Baker that has come over. There's 2 other source books or setting books that are being designed, and this is nothing to do with any of that.
Yeah, so the campaign frames and stuff like that that are coming out in Hope and Fear are completely different from those source books. So I love that they made sure to include that, because that was something that we were speculating about is what they're designing just going to be like a campaign frame, like that sort of thing. No, apparently we're getting a lot of major content still to come for Daggerheart. And we're talking about a game that's in reality just over 6 months old as far as like from release. Like, this is a lot of crazy good content to come out from something that is so new.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest Daggerheart announcements that came out of PAX Unplugged, and we got a hint, right? As we're walking around, we went by Foam Brain Dice, which is the official dice of Acquisitions Incorporated. They have been for years. And we noticed that all of the, like, your standard 7-piece dice sets for the individual characters that they've done were on sale. And I don't think it hit until we were sitting in the panel that there's a reason, because they're going to a different style of dice set, because Acquisitions Incorporated completely rebooted and is going with Daggerheart.
Yeah, so this is wild. So I think, depending on how involved you are in the kind of content creator side of the hobby, whether you watch Critical Role or not, there was a lot of pushback when Critical Role launched their new season and chose to stick with Dungeons and Dragons versus Daggerheart. There were a lot of people who were saying, I can't believe that they have this new system and it's in-house and they're not even going to use it. Whether you agree or disagree or think they should use it or not, regardless, as they didn't. They decided to go with something with D&D. But here we have the first, I would say, like, long-running major show take the leap into Daggerheart.
When it comes to this, like, kind of long play, live play format, Penny Arcade with Acquisitions Incorporated has been doing this since 2008. And of course, there have been offshoots, there have been one-offs. There was the C team that played for a while. This is an established thing that's just as solid as, I mean, anything you talk about, Dementia 20, Critical Role, Dungeons and Daddies. These guys have been doing it longer. And from the beginning, they have been using the D&D system.
And if you think about the past, the main DM for this for a long time was Chris Perkins.
Yeah.
And then he stepped down and Jeremy Crawford came in. I remember the PAX when that happened, because I remember us talking about it like, holy shit, Jeremy Crawford is going to be the new DM. Yeah. So these two, like, powerhouses have constantly been the runners of this game for a long time. And now we get to, both of them have joined Darrington Press to make Daggerheart content. And finally the pieces all click together, right?
Yeah.
This makes sense for them to want to begin to push this new system. And moving forward, we talked about, oftentimes it was really cool because the Acquisitions Incorporated games would be used to show off some of the new stuff coming from Wizards. So in particular, when they did the Ravnica book, they the show that year or that PAX was based in like a Ravnica plane hopping setting.
Yep.
And there are many other things like that with the Artificer. I remember Vi coming out of that and showing off that Artificer class. Like there a lot of stuff they use to show off what's up and coming for Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm excited to see if that trend continues, at least on the Daggerheart side. Are they going to use this show to begin to show off some of the up and coming stuff that happens in Daggerheart? We'll see. Only time will tell. But I think that's a great opportunity for them to do it.
Oh, absolutely. So the cast that played at PAX U was, of course, Jeremy Crawford as the GM, Jerry Holkins as Omin Dran, who appears to remain a half-elf. Yeah, Mike Krahulik, who plays Jim Darkmagic of the New Hampshire Dark Magics, was redesigned in Daggerheart to be a ribbit, which I thought was appropriate and hilarious. Jasmine Bueller was there playing Chastity Drawn, and she was playing as either I don't know if she's a full fairy or if she's a half fairy, but there's definitely fairy in her character. And Iffy Wadaway, who showed up as Dave.
Yes.
Yeah, and he is a clank. And in Daggerheart, your clanks, it talks about talk with your GM. What is your specific purpose? And apparently his specific purpose was being a cash register, because that's what the drawing is. He's got a big AI symbol in the middle with lots of buttons around it, like old school, out on the prairie, frontier town looking cash register, which is really cool. And then Matt Mercer actually made an appearance playing Beau Drawn, Omin's son. Omin apparently gets around a lot, and there's a lot of half this and half that going on. But the game was hilarious, and I think they really flexed a lot of what's good about the storytelling parts of this game. Just watching them, which it should be out on YouTube or something. They are streaming their stuff on Beacons now. I believe that's their official, but give it a couple days and you'll be able to find it. The story also went off the rails fast.
Oh, yeah. Which, that's kind of Acquisitions Incorporated's like MO.
Sure.
Like, the stories were oftentimes off the rails, but this one especially... Like I really liked the way they illustrated a lot of the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like implementing experiences and using those in certain ways, abilities and stuff like that. Of course, they were using, but like really leaning into that narrative focus. And of course, when you're playing at Jeremy Crawford's table, right? Like he rolls with the crazy as good as probably anyone does.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? So it was a really good show. It was really cool to see Mercer at the table for one, but now this is actually the second show that Iffy Wadaway has actually been at the Acquisitions Incorporated table. So I think that's really cool. I love to see him there as well, because he's a very good RPG player. I remember like thinking back, because we've obviously been watching the show for years. Like we were talking about some of the other characters that were either parts of the show for a while or made an appearance. So you got Pat Rothfuss is probably one of the most beloved characters I think that was ever there. Mainly for the crazy bullshit that he would pull. So there have been a lot of really good and cool players at this table. So I like to see the way that it's continued to grow and develop. But yeah, overall, like it was a fantastic show. I'm excited to see as they continue to push the boundaries of the system and begin to make it and work with it and that sort of thing. Because I think that's one thing that makes Daggerheart such a cool system, is that it is not rigid in any stretch of the imagination.
Oh God, no. Yeah. It is a lot of openness to storytelling, to make this as you go for the players and for the GM.
Yeah. So we'll see. They should continue to have an Acquisitions Incorporated at every PAX. So I'm excited to see when those come out and hear about those. And then who knows where Daggerheart's going to be here in the future, but I am happy to be along for the ride. Steel meets shadow. Fate takes form. Champions rise through fire and storm.
A roll of the dice and let destiny unfold. Heroes are born and legends told.
From whispered lore to endless glory, remember, friends, it all starts with a story.
And if you did want to jump into Daggerheart, we've got just the thing lined up for you. So we opened up a little bit last time. In this new segment, it all starts with a story, which is our dedicated RPG segment, and we are doing our deep dive into Daggerheart. So we're going to start with building some characters.
We just spent the rest of this episode talking about all the exciting new things coming out for Daggerheart. If you're hearing that and thinking, shit, I don't know how to get started. Surprise, we're here for you. So in this first segment, what we want to do is begin the character creation process. We're going to get through about half of it, and then you'll have to come back next episode to see how our characters end up.
So let's get started. What I like about it as the book will just walk you through how to complete characters, and it's very easy. It feels very intuitive. There's not all kinds of crazy decisions you have to make. Like we've done the Learn to Play with 5th edition, and building characters with new people is a solid hour process at least.
Yeah, it's all day long. Like that is a session period. Like we spend usually 4 hours, and it's building characters and then maybe a quick combat just to get them familiar with some of the base mechanics in 5e. So far, we have done one like brand new session of creating characters, and it took probably about an hour, but that was with a pizza break in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of other things that we'll talk about later on. Once you create your character, Daggerheart puts mechanics in place to start to build your party as well. And we're going to talk about that in the next episode. Right now, we're just going to focus on building them and talk about the system. The card system in Daggerheart is, I think, just genius. Like talking about simplifying a process and then giving you the tools for you to have a fully fleshed out character that you don't have to have a book of character sheet to play. You literally maybe have 2 or 3 pieces of paper in the character sheets, which are always designed for whatever that particular class is that you pick. Each class has its own character sheet, and you'll see as we go through it, there are reasons for that. But they're simple, they're easy. You find what you want in the card section, you pull that card, and that's who you are.
Yeah, so let's talk about where to get started. So first and foremost, if you don't have a copy of the core rulebook, that's okay. Almost all of the materials that you would need are available on Daggerheart's website in a printable version. They don't have the full rulebook or anything on there, but you can get your character sheets, and there's a lot of other resources and stuff like that you can find on there. What Daggerheart does really well is they make you start by choosing your class. Like that's the point where you start. And like you mentioned, it's because the character sheets are class dependent. There is a generic one if you want that, but it's so much better to use the class dependent ones because it gives you a lot of like information and resources and even background and experience question kind of things to really hash out that character in what it would be. Daggerheart, beginning with classes, Daggerheart has 9 different classes in the core rulebook. Each of these classes has 2 different subclasses. Just a quick rundown of the classes. We have a Bard, we have Druid, we have Guardian, which is more like your traditional fighter. We have Ranger, we have Rogue, we have Seraph, which is a divine, paladin, cleric, that sort of thing. We have Sorcerer, we have Warrior, and we have Wizard. So they're a little bit different than the traditional like D&D classes, but where I think this system really sings is not only the difference in the classes, but the difference in the subclasses.
Right.
Like they feel unique. And when you're thinking about the classes in Daggerheart, the whole core mechanic of the game has to do with something called domains, right? So in Daggerheart, in addition to the 9 classes, there are 9 domains, and each class will be a part of 2 of those domains. So the different domains, they are everything from Arcana, there's a Midnight domain, there is Bone, there is Blade, like in all the 9 of them. So I'm not going to go through every little bit because we'll be here all day long. Each class is a part of 2 of the domains, and each class will share a domain with another class. Where the domains come into effect are the cards that we were talking about earlier. So your abilities and things like that all come from your domain cards. So it gives you a really cool like connection with other classes. So for instance, the sorcerer is the Arcana and Midnight domain, and they share the Midnight domain with the rogue class. So the rogue is a Grace and Midnight domain. As you are creating characters at the table, you'll find that different characters will share these domains, which means they'll share the pool of domain cards that you can choose from. It's really cool in a way that you can build your character and really make them interconnected with other characters.
And for the domains you're talking about, that's where your spells come from, your abilities, the things that like the actual mechanics of your character. What I do is that we have just gotten rid of spell slots. There are some other resources that you can use we'll talk about, but I don't have to track spell slots anymore, so I'm instantly happier. Let's start off. We each designed and built a character.
Yes.
For the classes, we're going to start out with, I went with Warrior, and I believe you went with Sorcerer?
Yes.
So we wanted to share it out a little bit. So as a Warrior, I'm going to start out, and my 2, first of all, Warrior I noticed was the only class that gets that traditional attack of opportunity. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. But my 2 subclasses that I was able to choose from is Call of the Brave or Call of the Slayer. The Call of the Brave, you use what people throw at you as your own, refueling your own power, where Call of the Slayer is really just about killing things a lot. Overkill, if you will. But I went with Path of the Brave because we're going to see how this works out. Where did you go?
As a sorcerer, my 2 subclass options are Elemental Origin and Primal Origin. Elemental Origin is you control a particular element and have an affinity for it, whereas Primal Origin leans more towards the D&D sorcerer, where you have versatility in the way that you can affect your spells and things like that. It's kind of like meta magic is the way that it works. So I went with Primal Sorcerer just because meta magic has always been something that I've enjoyed and loved tinkering with in different ways.
And when you pick these, again, you just go into the binder, you find the Warrior cards that have either, like I said, the Call of the Brave or the Call of the Slayer. You take that card out, and you're ready to move on to start talking Heritage.
So on those cards specifically, they list your class features as well as your specific features for your subclass. So everything that you need for your class is ready to roll. Then you get to go, like you said, and we can begin to look at heritage. So heritage is the definition for the ancestry, which is basically like your character's race, and then their community, which is where they came from.
Real similar to like the old backgrounds, but first of all, there's not 8,000 of them, so that's cool. But I don't know, these feel like they do give you a little bit more flavor and something that you can really lean into as you're building with the community and you're building your character. But I don't know, they felt clean as well.
Yeah. So the first piece of that is going to be ancestry, right? So there are a ton of different ancestries here in the core set, which I love. And they're unique. Like they have a lot of really cool, the way they do the abilities. Each ancestry has a top ability and a bottom ability. And I love the way they've allowed for a mixed ancestry where you can choose the top ability of any ancestry and the bottom ability of any other one. And then surprise, that's what you are now.
And in the core rulebook, I believe there are 16.
That'd be 16. Yep.
Cool. Nailed it. And some of these are going to look familiar. Some of them are going to be like pretty obvious. Like you've seen some version of this in fantasy before. Clanks, which still feels like a racial epithet to me, is your like warborn, right? Like they are machines that are living, that are built for something. Dracona are your dragonborn. And of course, dwarf, elf, goblin, giant. But they all do have a unique kind of description to them. Like giants can have between 1 and 3 eyes. So have at that. Your Infernus are your tieflings, Qatari, because Qatari has wares. So yeah, the standards there, but there's also some fun ones in there. The Furbolg, of course, you knew Matt Mercer was going to introduce that. There's also, we talked a little bit about a ribbit, which is an anthropomorphic frogs, which there's no way that doesn't end up being hilarious in some sort of gameplay. And also they have simia, which are, again, monkeys. So they redid the Hadozi and took out all the racism. Well done, guys.
Yeah, I also think some of the more unique ones. So there is the fairy, which we've talked about with the Acquisitions Incorporated, which fairies in this are not like tiny humanoid creatures. They have like bug-like characteristics. So particularly Chassis Drawn is a type of moth, right? So like her characteristics with wings and all that like are very much based off of the moth, right? So you can really choose and flavor that how you want, which I think is really cool. I think the other one that's really cool is the fungrel. So they are like the myconids from the Forgotten Realms.
Yes.
So like the mushroom people basically. But I love looking at the illustrations in the book because they are so varied, right? And I guess if you think about all the different types of mushrooms and things like that exist, it's really cool to see some of their different takes on those.
Right. And again, they each have 2 abilities that you can use. And apparently in Daggerheart, you can just mix these any way that you want to. I actually have a mixed ancestry for my character. I went with the Galapa dwarf, which just, I need somebody to draw this. I have an artist working on it right now. I hope it comes out as funny as I'm imagining it.
Yeah, so the Galapa in Daggerheart is basically the turtle people. So they have huge shells, like that whole sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic connection.
So I took the top one from the Galapa and the bottom one from the dwarf. So from the Galapa, I took the shell ability, which was their top ability. So I get a bonus to my damage thresholds, which we'll talk about as we get into combat. And then from the dwarf, I can spend 3 hope to reduce incoming damage. So I feel like it's a very well-rounded character, especially as the warrior. What did you go with for your ancestry?
So I went with the Simia, which is the monkey people. So I just went straight Simia. So my 2 ancestry features are natural climber. You have advantage on agility rolls that involve balancing and climbing. And then nimble, which is gain a permanent +1 bonus to your evasion at character creation.
And that's it. Again, we pulled the card and we moved right on into our communities. I went with Seaborn because I've decided that I'm going to be a turtle dwarf pirate hunter. And again, Seaborn, your backgrounds, your ancestry community, that gives you something else that goes along with your character. And I believe you went with Wildborn, which sounds right for Simia.
Yeah, I did. So I went with Wildborn. So the Wildborn community feature is your movement is naturally silent and you have advantage on rolls to move without being heard. So I like how simplistic this is, right?
Yeah.
Versus backgrounds, right? So in the backgrounds with D&D, not only were there like 8 billion of them, but also it was like everything from your equipment, you got different things, you got a proficiency bonus to certain things. There were so many things you had to mark down. Here, it's like, all right, I chose Wildborn, I get this feature. But also I get a little card that says Wildborn that has this feature on it. So I don't have to write down anything. It's all right there. Right. And it's just so quick, easy, and simple. And once you have your character built, it's all right there on your cards that you don't have to worry about it. That is our heritage completed. So just to recap, so I have a sorcerer and went with the primal origin subclass. I'm a Simia for the heritage or for the ancestry, and Wildborn for the community.
And I have a warrior called the Brave, who is a Galapa dwarf and is Seaborn for my community.
Excellent. So let's hop into the traits real quick. All right. So if you know anything about RPGs, there's usually 6-ish traits that will define and affect how your character, how good they are at certain things. In the past, particularly with 5e, right, there were numbers that you would have called the standard array, or you could roll for your traits to see how good you were at certain things. Daggerheart just makes it easy. They say, here you go, you have 6 traits, and you have 1 -1, 2 zeros, 2 +1s and 1 +2. You put them where you want.
I can't tell you how happy I am to not have to explain to people, not that not saying anything bad about players, but new players look at this and you're like, hey, just add your strength bonus. And they're like, is that the big number or the little number? Like the big number just serves no damn purpose anymore in 5th edition.
Yeah. And there is only one number now, so that takes care of that debate. There we could stop the war. There is no more fighting. Here we go. It's just very simple. And I like how it doesn't translate down like 5th edition does to proficiencies, right? For instance, you could be good at dexterity but were you really good at like stealth, or were you really good at sleight of hand? Daggerheart doesn't do that. You just have your 6 top line traits, and that's it. So the traits are as follows. You have agility, strength, finesse, instinct, presence, and knowledge. And then underneath them, they give 3 examples of actions that are governed by those traits. So it's, again, really simple, really straightforward. You decide what your character is going to be good at, what they're going to be not so good at. And I like that the penalty is only ever a -1.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's only one of those, right?
It feels like standard array, which
It really
I'm
does.
okay with.
Yeah. So it makes it nice and clean. So for my traits in particular, I took a 0 in agility. My -1 is in strength. +1 is in finesse. +2 is in instinct, which is the sorcerer's casting trait. +1 in presence, and then a 0 in knowledge.
And I went with +1 in agility, +2 strength, 0 in my finesse, +1 to my instinct, -1 to presence, and 0 in my knowledge. What I also like about it is every character sheet comes with a character guide sheet. It'll give you suggested traits for what they think that character should have. And you can go with that, or if you're comfortable with it, tinker with it, make your character. It also gives you suggested weaponry and armor just to really get you started quick, which I really like that, again, about this system where there are mechanics built in to make this easy and to make this a role-playing game.
Yeah. And speaking of, as we move into equipment, I really love the way that they did armor and weapons in this game. So in traditional D&D, there were certain like classes that couldn't wear certain armors. There were various like penalties or things like that to them. It could be very complicated very fast.
Yeah.
In Daggerheart, they basically said, if you want a wizard or a caster type and you want them to have a heavy armor situation, go for it. Like there aren't any restrictions holding you back from that. And actually the Corp rule book, it talks about you can flavor that how you want. You don't need your wizard wearing plate armor. Like maybe it's these arcane shields that through wards that they have that make them like their armor just better. So something along those lines. Like you can flavor it and storytell it however you want to. But at the end of the day, if you want that character to be able to wear that heavy armor, go for it. Now, that being said, heavy armor is not always the best.
No, if you think the tin can is the only and best answer, you should reconsider some things. Because what you get from your armor is not the number that people need to hit you, which AC has always been one of those things that's been a little iffy with me, but I love this system better.
Yeah. So armor determines your thresholds. And I know you're thinking, what is a threshold? That doesn't sound like something I've ever heard before. Welcome to Daggerheart. This is a great time to talk about how you do your health as a character. With Daggerheart, you do not keep track of a pool of hit points anymore. That's just a random number. I don't know. Let's say 12. Instead, you have HP slots and you have damage thresholds. Okay. So when you are adventuring and you get hit by something, the amount of damage that is done to you will fall in one of your thresholds, right? You have a minor damage, which will be 1 damage to your first threshold. You have major damage, which will be anything between your first threshold and your second threshold. And then you have severe damage, which is anything over your second threshold. With these thresholds, they are determined by your armor and any specific, there are some things that will adjust those thresholds, like the Galapa ability that you took, right? It can adjust those and make them a little bit higher. But at the end of the day, most characters start with somewhere around 6 HP slots, right? If you take minor damage, you mark 1 HP slot. If you take major damage, you mark 2. And if you take severe damage, you would mark 3.
So my character that's wearing chainmail, my damage thresholds with my bonus from being a Galapa is 8 and 16. So if something attacks me and does 7 or less damage, that's my minor. 8 to 15 damage is my major, and then anything over 16 is severe damage, and I'll end up marking 3 hit points.
Now, the other cool thing about armor is it comes with a base armor score, right? And this armor score allows you to, when you take damage, you can mark an armor slot to reduce the threshold by 1. So, for instance, if you take minor damage, you mark an armor slot, you end up taking no damage. Major gets reduced to minor, and severe reduced to major. Okay, nice and easy. So how many armor slots does your chainmail come with?
So mine is a base score of 4. So I can use that ability on my armor 4 times before I absolutely have to repair it.
Yep. Which repairing armor is something you can do in the downtime of this game, as opposed to your traditional just short rest or long rest actions. So really cool. We'll get into that at another episode down the road. So that is your base of armor, right? For me, I chose a Gambeson armor, which is kind of like a padded armor. So my base thresholds are only 5 and 11. So if I take higher damage, I'm going to get hurt a lot more. But it gives me a +1 to my evasion. Now, evasion is that kind of traditional AC score. So again, it allows us to be hopefully avoid more damage as opposed to just taking it on the chin.
Right. That's more of your number that the DM has to roll to hit, and every class starts with a specific number that is already on your sheet. Because I am wearing heavy armor, I do take a -1 to evasion. So where a warrior starts out with 11, I'm sitting at 10.
And whereas a sorcerer starts at 10, because of my armor and because of my ability as a simia, I am at a 12 evasion. That is armor. In a quick nutshell, heavier armor is not always best. It really depends on how you want to build your character. So that is where we will stop for this segment of building your character. You now should have your character's class, your heritage, so both your ancestry and community, your traits, and the beginning of your equipment made for your character. When we come back on the next episode, we will pick up with weapons, as well as move on to general inventory, and then we'll begin to talk about who your character is, create your background, your experiences, and begin to choose domain cards for your character.
Perfect. I feel like you don't want to miss that, and that's not just because I want you to listen more. Ladies and gentlemen, with that,
Lee moves into melee and plays the scheme Nunchaku, giving +1 to his attacks and another action, which he uses to play Momentous Shift. And because he started in another space, his card is a 5, +1 for the scheme. Now, how will the champ respond?
Ali plays Champion of the World with a 4 value. The champ still takes 2 damage, and now it's his turn. The champ switches his stance from float like a butterfly to sting like a bee and plays the greatest, doing 4 damage and then +2 for the stance.
The dragon doesn't seem to have a defense card for Ali and takes the full 6 damage to the face. And Ali gets 2 more actions. Close and clinch where neither fighter can leave their space now, and stronger than the skill, dealing 3 more damage and making Lee shuffle a card to the back of his deck.
It's still anyone's fight, so stay tuned. For the Dapper Meeple, I'm Jim.
And I'm Josh. Good night, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for sticking around and listening to our show.
If you enjoyed it, let me ask you a favor. Follow us and leave a like wherever you get your podcasts. It'll really help us out.
And if you have anything to say back to us, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook by searching for the Dapper Meeple. Or you can email us at dappermeeplegaming@gmail.com.
And as always, we'll save you a seat at the table.